Well, a very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much to Ilana and to Prof. Cantor in his absence. We really hope he's recovering well. But thank you very much for convening this discussion on a topic that is very, very close to my heart as well, and to the heart of the city of Cape Town. I'm joined here this evening by a number of colleagues from our city team. I see several of them in the room, but I do just want to introduce Councillor Carl Popham in the front here, who's our mayoral committee member for human settlements. And then I see Nolwandle Kliba, who I did see her before we started, there we go. And Rob McGaffin, who are respectively our executive directors for human settlements and spatial planning and the environment. And we're joined by a couple of others working in this space broadly as well. So hopefully we can have a really productive conversation. But this is an issue that really is close to our heart, because title deeds are a relatively small piece of legal script and paper that can have an absolutely life-changing impact on people's lives and families. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to join you to what we consider in the city a very important conversation. Our mission in Cape Town, as you will have heard me speak about, if you've seen me speak publicly before, is to build what we call a city of hope for everyone who lives here. A place where every Cape Townian can see and feel their lives improving over time and have the reasonable prospect of a better life for themselves and their families over time in our city. Where every resident of our city has reason to believe in a more prosperous and better future. Much of that idea of a city of hope comes, of course, from tangible improvements that we work on every day. The quality of life improvements that come from better services in informal settlements or in poorer communities. The physical improvements that come from public infrastructure that help us achieve our goals. And that is why we are doing those things at record levels, setting new records every year of this administration for public infrastructure investment, South African records, not just city records. Mostly through these mega investments in water and sanitation infrastructure, we are improving the lived quality of life and lived experience of all Cape Town residents. Also in our electricity grid, and by diversifying our energy supply, in expanding public transport, in safety technology, and of course in the important area of delivering more affordable accommodation for people living in our city. In all of these areas, we are taking steps to ensure that all of Cape Town's communities have access to greater dignity and a greater prospect of prosperity in the future. But the point for this evening is that all of those tangible and very practical improvements are important, but not sufficient. Hope doesn't just come from improved living conditions. It also comes, critically, from economic independence. Of course, in South Africa, that primarily refers to the dignity of employment, of getting work. And everything that we do in the city, overall, is about growing this city economy faster so that we can provide work, not directly through the city, but through a growing economy. Provide the conditions in which jobs are created for the roughly 1 million Cape Townians who would like to be employed, but who are not. And of course, the more than 11 million, now more than 12 million South Africans in the same position. So it comes from economic independence, the dignity of employment, and the ability to look after your family. It comes from escaping the cycle of intergenerational poverty and the prospect of leaving something for your children that will put them in a better financial position than you are now. To achieve this goal, there are few things more empowering than owning your own property. Aside from the powerful symbolic aspect of being a rightful owner of a piece of land in our society here in South Africa, and the house that you live in as a family, and the sense of ownership and shared prosperity and shared outcomes that gives you in our democratic project. But it's also a powerful asset and a ticket to financial security. As we all know, as South Africans under apartheid, intergenerational poverty was deliberately engineered by the state, not only by removing people from their homes and their land forcefully and pushing them to the very distant edges of urban centres or even further beyond to dormitory towns like Atlantis, for example, but also by forcefully preventing them from saving money, from owning assets, and from passing assets and wealth down to their children. So home ownership is one of the best ways to restore all of these things that apartheid took away from so many South African citizens. Home ownership is genuine and real empowerment. That is why I say that having a title deed in your hands is such a life-changing document. It is, after all, just a piece of paper, but it has life-changing implications for South Africans and their families, both present families and future members of those families, as yet unborn. And that's why it's such a high priority, it's such a keen interest for us in the city to speed up our program of giving people formal title and tenure to their houses and properties. We have 3 different title deed programs that run concurrently in the city that I want to tell you about briefly. The first of these is the issuing of title deeds for new housing developments that the city is responsible for doing, state subsidized housing developments. And over the past 2 financial years, and including the first quarter of this financial year now, we have transferred 4,222 of those title deeds for new housing developments in the city. The second is what is known as the National Title Restoration Project. This is the project of catching up the backlog of historical projects, in other words, state-subsidized homes already handed over the last 30 years of democracy and occupied, often for a long time, but where in those earlier programs title and formal tenure was not handed over at the same time. This refers to the primary transfers from the state to approved beneficiaries of developments by the various human settlements directorates and departments from 1994 up to and including 2015. In 2016, the backlog in the city was established to be in the region of 21,000 outstanding title deeds, who could be linked to transferable properties and homes. In 2017, a project to identify and confirm these beneficiaries was approved here in the Western Cape by the Provincial Minister. These 21,000 properties were individually visited by our team at the time so that occupancy could be established, and most of the transfers that could be done based on this occupancy confirmation have now been done. This comes to 10,697 transfers that have been completed. The more astute among you will realize that that leaves roughly 10,000 more of that original backlog where the beneficiaries were no longer in occupation and could not be traced, and which then required a number of steps to be followed in accordance with our project. This part of the process, as you well know, and Ilana has been a real trailblazer in this regard, is often held up by a number of legal and practical constraints. For example, the legal complications in cases of deaths and estates, where people have passed away intestate, all of which holds up transfer sometimes for years. So finding the proper beneficiaries or their descendants and regularizing occupants is an extremely time-consuming process, involving placing adverts for the tracing of missing beneficiaries, mediating contested claims, and that is something that my office personally deals with very often. One of the most common things that I get is sad disputes and fights between siblings of deceased beneficiaries as to who should inherit the property. Fixing existing human settlements databases, which can take the national government, the National Human Settlements Database, just to do that anywhere from 6 to 9 months. Then applying for new subsidies for occupants, in some cases going to the High Court, and so the list could go on about all the things, the obstacles that have to be removed in the way of regularizing title, and that is just for that 10,000 plus backlog here in Cape Town. But we are steadily chipping away at this total, and I must really thank the team from the City of Cape Town, and also a couple of very, very difficult cases that I've personally worked on, that I've sent through to the TSC, that have really helped us on these really tricky and sticky cases. Then, The city's third title deed program is our most recent project and one that we are very proud of, and we're very excited for its potential, and we call that our no-cost transfer program. This program we approved at the start of this term, back in October of 22, and it provides financial assistance to long-standing tenants of council rental stock to buy their units from us and receive title deeds both at no cost, both the purchase and the transfer at no cost. In other words, we cover all of those costs in full. Here we are talking about families that may have lived in their council homes for decades. Most of the people that we have been to see have been in their homes for 2, 3, even 4 decades, raising children, even grandchildren in those homes, but never, ever owning them. Some of them have dutifully paid their rent to the City of Cape Town for all of those decades. Now, those homes can be theirs and can be passed on to their children or grandchildren at no cost at all to themselves. Before this no-cost transfer program, many tenants in our city's affordable rental stock made use of what was called, under the National Housing Code, the Enhanced Extended Discount Benefit Scheme. Governments love long titles. This scheme provides a small subsidy to support the purchase of a rental unit, but it also places a financial burden on the beneficiary themselves. And what we were finding is that many residents, in fact by far the majority of them, were not even taking up that opportunity to own that property because they could not meet even the small reduced financial burden that previous subsidy program required. And so we came up with a no-cost transfer to allow them to take ownership of those properties at zero cost. Our no-cost transfer program allows them to become owners, as I've said. We cover the attorney transfer fees. We cover an upfront payment of insurance costs on the property for them for 12 months only. After that, they have to take over the home insurance. And we also cover, in many of these cases, we'll find that there are City of Cape Town service and rental arrears, and we cover that we write off those arrears as well. And I'm really pleased to say that since the 1st of November 2022, we have transferred 3,287 of these homes under this program. And we intend to step up the pace with more than 3,400 of those transfers currently with attorneys awaiting registration. So that is roughly 6,700 brand new homeowners where those families have been long-term tenants of the state. That is really true empowerment. We also intend to keep this momentum going by making our title deed transfer program as accessible and transparent as possible. We continue to educate and raise awareness around the collection of title deeds through ongoing stakeholder engagement sessions with the public and media campaigns. We invite people to certain locations all around the city to come and check if they are one of those title deed backlog beneficiaries. We have a dedicated civic center kiosk where they can come and check whether they are on that list and collect their title deed. And most recently, in fact, where we've been able to trace details, we have a program which I think Carl is calling Deed to Your Door, a kind of Uber Mr. D for title deeds, where Carl rocks up at your, or Carl and his team rather rock up at your house to deliver your title deed to you directly, so that we can try and address that backlog as quickly as possible and make true homeowners of all of these residents. So, ladies and gentlemen, we take the business of making Cape Townians property owners through title deeds very, very seriously. We're committed to this because we firmly believe in the transformative power and the empowering, true empowerment of allowing people to take control of their own future, to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty, which is one of the worst legacies of apartheid, and to make people true homeowners, to give them a real stake in the success of our society and our democracy. We believe in this very passionately. We are grateful for organizations like the TSC who help enormously in the achievement of that vision here in Cape Town and beyond. I think you operate all over the place. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how we intend to build a city of hope. Helping people to get themselves onto the first rung of the asset ownership ladder is one of the best ways to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty and change lives for good. So I really appreciate all of the work that you are doing, and to the extent possible, please support the work of many, many good organizations doing this here in Cape Town. Thank you once again.